They said the same words every time. "We value you, Eva, but you know how it is. Budget constraints." Years. 8 years of late nights, record profits, and next quarter promises. I generated more revenue in my division than any other manager. Proved it in numbers so clear they could have been tattooed on the quarterly report. Yet every raise request died the same death. Politely, quietly, behind HR's smile. Meanwhile, the guys in the golf club photos. Their promotions came with champagne and catered lunches. Mine came with team pizza Fridays and a $25 gift card to the same cafe where I worked weekends just to breathe. I used to think loyalty meant something, that if I just worked harder they'd notice. That's the kind of lie companies love because it keeps you quiet. The first crack in the illusion came during the annual review 3 years ago. Greg, the same boss who'd take credit for my team's innovation, leaned back in his leather chair and said, "Eva, you're indispensable, but you're too valuable to promote. If you move up, who will hold this place together?" That's when I realized I wasn't being rewarded for keeping the company stable. I was being punished for it. So I started building something of my own quietly. It began as a late-night idea, half rebellion, half therapy. A workflow platform that automated what I'd been doing manually for years, predicting revenue dips before they happened, optimizing logistics across departments, cutting human error down to nearly zero. Called it Pulse. Every line of code was written on my personal laptop. No company servers, no office Wi-Fi, no borrowed tools, just me, coffee, and the hum of the refrigerator at 2 a.m. First, it was just a secret. My secret. I tell myself it was a technical experiment, something to keep my brain from rusting. But it grew fast. I started testing Pulse on dummy data, and the results were ridiculous. A system that took our analysts a week could now run in 90 seconds. Kept it quiet. At work, I stayed the reliable workhorse. The Rock, as Greg liked to call me, when he needed something impossible done overnight. I smiled, nodded, stayed late, and hit every impossible target. I let him believe I was burning out. The truth, I was burning brighter than I ever had. Then came the promotion that broke me. We just closed a multi-million-dollar logistics contract, the kind that should have doubled my department's value overnight. I spent 3 months negotiating, rewriting projections, saving the company a small fortune in penalties. The ink was barely dry when Greg called everyone into the conference room. "Let's give it up for Adam," he said, clapping like a seal. "He's the future of this department." Adam, who had joined 6 months ago. Adam, whose most notable contribution was a broken spreadsheet. Everyone clapped, even me. That's what you do when your survival depends on pretending you're okay. That night I didn't cry. Coded. Pulse evolved from prototype to platform. I started incorporating machine learning, pattern recognition, predictive scaling, automated reporting. Within a year, it could run a mid-size company's entire operations in real time. Quietly, efficiently, invisibly. Still, I stayed silent because I knew what would happen if Greg found out. He'd call it collaboration. HR would call it company property. And I'd be erased from my own creation before sunrise. Then one Tuesday morning it happened. I got an email from a small publication called TechFront Weekly. Subject line: "Congratulations on the Pulse beta launch. We'd love to feature you." And blinked. My hand froze over the mouse. I hadn't launched anything publicly. Turns out a freelance journalist had found my open-source demo on a startup forum, recognized its potential, and written a glowing piece. It was already trending on LinkedIn. By noon, 3 companies had sent partnership inquiries. One of them was backed by a major VC. By 2 p.m., my phone lit up with a message from Greg. "Ava, urgent. Come to the boardroom. Now." I walked in, still wearing my noise-canceling headphones around my neck like armor. Greg sat at the head of the table, red-faced, surrounded by legal and 2 board members who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't waste time. "You built this Pulse thing while employed here. That makes it ours." He leaned back, smirked. "We own your code, sweetheart." The word sweetheart hit like a spark to gasoline. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I knew something he didn't. In my folder, my quiet little war chest was my original employment contract. Page 4, Clause 9.2. The employee retains ownership of all intellectual property developed independently and outside employer-compensated hours using non-comp. It was the kind of clause they'd removed years ago for new hires, but no one ever updated mine. As Greg started talking about legal implications and fiduciary obligations, I smiled. The kind of smile you wear like armor, because I knew this was just the beginning. And when the lawyer read that one line, when his face went ghostly pale, everything they thought they owned would crumble. But that's a story for tomorrow. Because tonight I'd earned my first quiet victory. I finally built something they couldn't steal. The next morning the office felt different. Or maybe I did. When I walked in, conversation stopped half a beat too early. A few people looked up from their screens, then quickly looked back down. Slack was quieter than usual, except for a single message from my teammate Carla. Greg's been pacing since 8. You okay? I replied with a simple thumbs up emoji because what could I say? Yeah, totally fine. Just apparently triggered a corporate meltdown by existing. By 9:30, Greg called me into his office. The door clicked shut behind me like the start of an interrogation. He smiled the way people do when they're angry, but trying to sound reasonable. Ava, you should have told us about this little side project. It's independent, I said calmly. Outside hours, my own hardware. He nodded slowly like he was explaining something to a child. Perception matters. When leadership sees a manager launching a product, it raises questions like, are you fully committed to this company? There was the word committed. The same word they use when they want you to feel guilty for wanting more. I stayed quiet. Greg leaned forward. We're all a team here, Eva. You know, I've always supported your career, but we need transparency. So, send over your codebase and repo link to legal. Just so we're clear. My pulse didn't rise. I just said, no. His smile cracked. Excuse me. It's my personal property, I said. Clause 9.2. You signed it when I joined. For a second, his eyes flickered like he wasn't sure if I was bluffing. Then he laughed, soft and condescending. Those old contracts don't hold up. Our policies have evolved. Then it's good mine hasn't, I said, standing up. I walked out before he could answer. By lunchtime, HR had emailed me a friendly reminder about company loyalty and intellectual property protection. Legal requested voluntary disclosure of any independent projects. The subject line read, let's clarify before it gets complicated. It was already complicated. Carla stopped by my desk mid-afternoon whispering, they're freaking out. I overheard Greg talking to the VP. Something about controlling the narrative before investors see it. Investors, I repeated. She nodded. Apparently, the board's been on edge since that article dropped. Some clients even reached out to them directly, asking if Pulse is part of our platform. I nearly laughed. The irony was perfect. For 8 years, they'd refused to give me a raise because I supposedly didn't bring enough value. Now they were panicking because I brought too much. That evening I stayed late. Not for them but for me. I logged into Pulse, reviewing the metrics from the test clients who had already reached out. The numbers were incredible. Response times down 60%, predictive accuracy up 40%. My code was performing better than I'd ever hoped. Then came a message on LinkedIn. Raymond, HealthStream CTO, congrats on the coverage. We'd love to discuss early adoption if you're open. My hands shook slightly as I typed back. Happy to talk. Let's set a call. When I finally closed my laptop, it was 11. The cleaning crew was mopping near the elevators, and the office smelled like bleach and coffee grounds. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small walking through that hallway. The next morning, HR scheduled an urgent sync. They smiled too much like hosts on a game show. We understand your perspective, Eva, said Nora from HR, her voice syrupy smooth. But your employment agreement implies a duty of loyalty. Launching a public product could appear conflicting. Took a breath. Duty of loyalty doesn't override a signed clause. She blinked. Clause 9.2, I said. Page 4. Behind her, the company lawyer shifted uncomfortably. He knew. They exchanged glances. Nora smiled again, tighter this time. Well, let's not make this adversarial. Leadership values you. Leadership values results, I said. That's what Pulse delivers. By the time I left the room, the entire HR floor had gone silent. That evening, Carla called. Eva, rumor is Greg's setting up a board meeting. He said your project jeopardizes company interests. I stared out my apartment window at the city lights flickering like static. Let him, I said. I spent the next few hours preparing. Backups of Pulse on 3 drives, server logs timestamped from my personal IP, screenshots of every commit, every GitHub update, all after hours. The evidence was airtight. Still, part of me trembled, not from fear, but anticipation. I'd been quiet for so long that confrontation felt like a new language. Just after midnight, a new email arrived from Greg. Subject: Boardroom, 9 a.m. sharp body. Bring your project details and your contract. No greeting, no signature. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. For 8 years, they'd told me I wasn't worth a raise. Tomorrow, they'd learn how expensive underestimating me could be. I packed the printed contract into a red folder, the same one that held every ignored raise request, every not this quarter email. My quiet history of being invisible. Then I closed my laptop and turned off the lights. The city outside was restless, humming. So was I. Tomorrow wasn't just another workday. It was the day everything changed. They didn't even bother putting it on my calendar. At 8:07 a.m., I got a short message from the executive admin. Please be in conference room A at 9 a.m. per CEO request. No subject, no agenda, no attachments, just that single line. It read less like an invite and more like a summons. When I arrived, the atmosphere hit like static before a storm. Greg was at the head of the table, flanked by 2 board members and a company lawyer I'd only seen once before. Thin, expensive suit, expression like wet cement. A carafe of untouched coffee sat between them. Eva, Greg said, forcing a smile. Glad you could make it. I sat across from him, placing my red folder on the table. He clasped his hands like a man pretending to lead a therapy session. We're here to have a professional conversation about this Pulse situation. Situation? Yes. Greg leaned back. You've developed software while under contract. Software that overlaps with company operations that creates a conflict of interest and overlap. I interrupted. Pulse optimizes cross-departmental efficiency. Your company sells shipping analytics. They're not the same thing. The lawyer cleared his throat. They operate in adjacent verticals which could constitute intellectual property interference. I almost laughed. They'd clearly rehearsed this. Greg continued. Look, nobody wants this to get ugly. Just hand over your repository and we'll figure out a fair solution. You'll be compensated, of course. Compensated, I repeated. Like the raises I never got. His smile thinned. Don't make this emotional, Eva. I'm not, I said. I'm being factual. A faint muscle jumped in his jaw. You built it on company time. No, I said simply. All logs, commits, and data show work completed outside paid hours. All from my personal hardware. I can prove it. Greg turned to the lawyer. Tell her how this works. The lawyer began, voice steady, detached. Under standard employment law, any invention conceived during employment that relates to company business can be considered the employer's property. He paused for effect, looking at me. Even if developed off-site. I didn't move. Standard law doesn't override signed contracts. He blinked. Pardon. I opened my folder, sliding a document across the table. My original employment agreement, page 4, clause 9.2. Greg frowned, glancing at it, then waved for the lawyer to read it. The lawyer scanned the page, eyes moving slowly. Halfway down, his posture shifted. He read the sentence again, slower. His face lost color. Greg noticed. What? What does it say? The lawyer hesitated. It states that any intellectual property developed independently and outside employer-compensated hours remains the sole property of the employee. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. Greg's brows furrowed. That clause doesn't exist in our contracts. It does in mine, I said. Yours has your signature on it right there. He grabbed the paper, skimmed it, then looked up at the lawyer. You're telling me this is still enforceable? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. If this document is valid, and it appears to be, then yes. Legally, Pulse belongs to her. Greg's face flushed crimson. This is absurd. She built it while on our payroll. Using her own equipment outside business hours, the lawyer replied. Your clause explicitly allows that. The board members exchanged looks. One coughed. The other adjusted his tie and said quietly, we never updated the legacy agreements after the merger. Greg turned to me, his voice tight. You planned this. I read what I signed, I said. You should try it sometime. His hand twitched against the table. You're violating the spirit of company loyalty. Loyalty, I said softly. I gave you 8 years. I trained your hires. Saved your contracts, brought in record profits. You rewarded me with excuses and coffee vouchers. No one spoke. Even the air conditioner seemed to hesitate. Finally, the older board member cleared his throat. Greg, you've put the company in a very delicate position. Greg turned desperate. We can't just let her walk away with this. The code could compete with us. The lawyer folded the document neatly. Then you should have renegotiated her contract years ago. A knock on the door interrupted the silence. Everyone turned. The CEO stepped in. Not a man who attended many meetings. He was tall, calm, carrying a tablet. What's going on here? Yes. Greg stood quickly. We've got an IP issue, sir. Eva here launched a product that infringes. The CEO held up a hand. I've read the clause. Legal briefed me. He turned to me. You built Pulse. Yes, I said. He nodded once slowly. Then congratulations. It's impressive work. Greg stared stunned. Wait, you're siding with her. The CEO's tone sharpened. I am acknowledging competence. Something this leadership team apparently failed to do for nearly a decade. Greg's mouth opened, but no words came out. The CEO looked around the table. This meeting's over. And just like that it was. Greg's pen slipped from his hand and rolled across the table. The lawyer packed his briefcase. The board members avoided eye contact. I gathered my folder, slid it into my bag and stood. Greg finally managed. You'll regret this. I looked at him calm and steady. No, Greg, you will. As I walked out, the hallway felt strangely quiet, like the building itself knew something had shifted. For the first time in years, the weight on my shoulders wasn't theirs. It was mine, and it was power. By the time I reached my desk, the whispers had already started. People glanced up from their screens, then looked away too quickly. Carla mouthed, "What happened?" across the cubicle divider. I just shook my head. There was no way to explain what had just occurred in that boardroom without sounding like I'd walked out of a courtroom instead of a meeting. Greg's door stayed shut for the rest of the morning. Occasionally, I'd catch his shadow pacing behind the frosted glass. Legal passed by twice, one of them holding my contract like it was evidence from a crime scene. At 11:20, an all-staff email hit inboxes. Subject: clarification on recent media mentions. Our company supports innovation and independent creativity among employees. However, we want to reaffirm that collaboration and communication are key values. Please direct any external inquiries to the communications department. Translation. Greg was trying to control the fire. I didn't reply, didn't post, didn't even log on to LinkedIn. I just focused on my work. Well, technically my former work, because deep down I knew my time here was already over. Around noon, Carla appeared beside my desk with 2 coffees. I heard from someone in HR, she whispered. Greg's losing it. He told the VP you blindsided him. I smiled faintly. He blindsided himself. I just brought the paperwork. She exhaled slowly. You're kind of a legend right now. Half the office is rooting for you. That surprised me more than it should have. For years I'd been invisible, dependable, silent, uncomplaining. Now people saw me not as a team player but as someone who finally stopped playing. By 3 p.m. I received an email from HR. Subject: Exit discussion. Eva, please meet with HR tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to discuss next steps regarding your transition. Transition, the corporate word for exile. I left the office quietly, avoiding eye contact, the folder still tucked under my arm like armor. Outside, the air was crisp, sharp with early winter. My hands trembled, not with fear, but adrenaline. That night, I opened my personal laptop and checked my inbox. Pulse's mailbox was overflowing. Partnership inquiries, demo requests, even one from a regional bank wanting to license a beta version. And there it was, an email from Charles Greer, the company's lead investor. Saw the board notes. I'd like to speak directly. Tomorrow 7 p.m. call me. Greer was the kind of man who didn't speak often, but made people nervous when he did. I'd only seen him once during an all-hands years ago. His face projected on a giant screen as he congratulated Greg's leadership. Now he wanted to talk to me. I barely slept that night, not from anxiety but from ideas. Pulse wasn't just a side project anymore. It was alive, breathing, attracting attention. For the first time, I wasn't chasing validation. I was chasing possibility. The next morning, HR looked almost relieved when I walked in. Eva, thank you for coming, said Nora, offering a smile too polished to be genuine. We've spoken with leadership and we've mutually decided that a graceful transition is best for everyone. Meaning you're firing me, I said. Not at all, she replied quickly. We're offering a separation package, 3 months' pay, a positive reference, and continued benefits. I folded my hands. And if I refuse? Her smile didn't waver. Then we might need to reevaluate certain clauses about competitive overlap. There was the threat beneath the sugar. I leaned forward. Clause 9.2 still stands. You can't touch Pulse. You can't even imply you own part of it. And if you try, I'll take that to court and the press. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Nora cleared her throat. We'll process your separation today. An hour later, my access badge stopped working. My inbox was deactivated. My corporate phone buzzed once before locking itself out. Just like that, 8 years of work vanished into the company's servers, archived under former employees. But it didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It felt clean, like stepping out of a cage I hadn't realized I'd built around myself. That evening I called Charles Greer. His voice was calm, low, deliberate. I read your contract, he said without preamble. Greg's leadership has been a liability for a while. You handled yourself well. Thank you, I said carefully. I'm not calling to offer sympathy, he continued. I'm calling to offer investment. Pulse is smart, scalable. You built something they couldn't even recognize when it was right under their noses. I'd like to back it properly. For a moment I couldn't speak. You want to invest in me. In Pulse, he said, then paused. But yes, in you too. You've got what this company lost years ago. Clarity. He sent a term sheet before the call even ended. After hanging up, I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by empty coffee mugs and outdated company awards, staring at the screen. My hands shook as I signed the NDA and the preliminary agreement. I thought I'd feel triumph, maybe vindication. Instead, I felt something quieter, freedom. That night, I poured a glass of wine, sat on my balcony, and watched the city lights flicker below. Somewhere in that skyline, Greg was probably still drafting angry emails trying to convince the board I was the villain. Let him, because tomorrow the press would publish a headline neither of us could rewrite. Former operations manager's platform raises seed round led by Greer Ventures. And for once, I wouldn't be the one left clapping in the background. The morning the article went live, my phone didn't stop buzzing. It started with a ping from TechFront Weekly. Eva Jensen, former operations manager at Core Access, secures early funding for Pulse AI, an independent workflow optimization platform. By 9 a.m. it was everywhere. The same company that once denied me every raise was now trending because their ex-employee had outbuilt them. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. LinkedIn notifications exploded. Hundreds of comments, connection requests, congratulations from people who had never spoken to me once in 8 years. And mixed among them, a single message from Greg. "Ava, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I didn't reply. By noon, Pulse's website crashed under traffic. My inbox was flooded with inquiries. Beta requests, partnership offers, job applications. It was chaos. The good kind. The kind that comes after years of being overlooked. Carla texted me from the office. "He's losing it. He called an emergency meeting. Char is panicking. Someone said the investors are investigating leadership practices." Type back. "Tell them I wish them the best." That night, Greer called again. His voice was calm, measured. "Eva, I've received more interest in Pulse today than in half our portfolio last quarter. We're moving fast. The board wants to announce your first funding round tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow?" I said, barely believing it. "Yes, and Eva," he added, "don't apologize for being ready." When the call ended, I sat in the dark for a while, the city lights blinking outside like patient metronomes. I thought of the nights I'd spent staring at code until my eyes ached, the weekends I'd carried Greg's projects while he played golf, the birthdays I'd worked through because the team needs you. For the first time, all of it felt worth it. Still, a part of me needed closure. Not revenge, just clarity. So, I sent Greg one final email. "I appreciate the opportunities one had at Caraxis. I learned a lot about leadership, mostly what it shouldn't look like. Best of luck to you and the team." No bitterness, no accusation. Just a quiet truth. He never replied. 2 days later, Pulse officially launched. The demo went live, sleek and polished, running on servers I'd configured myself. Within hours, the analytics dashboard lit up. 23,000 visits, 3,000 signups, 7 enterprise inquiries. Then came the call I didn't expect. Core Access's CEO. "Eva," he said, his tone cautious, almost respectful. "You've built something impressive. I want you to know there are no hard feelings." I waited. There was always a but. "But," he continued, "Greg's resigned effective immediately. The board wasn't happy with how he handled the situation. They asked me to pass along that you're welcome back if you ever want to return in an advisory capacity." I almost laughed. "You're offering me a job at the company that tried to take my work." "Not a job," he said quickly. "A partnership." I smiled to myself. "I already have one. It's with myself." He hesitated, then sighed. "Well, congratulations, Eva. Truly." When we hung up, I closed my laptop and leaned back. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. The same sound that had kept me company during those long nights of coding. Later that evening, Carla called. "You won't believe this," she said, half laughing. "Greg's meltdown made it into the investor report. Someone leaked that board meeting transcript, the clause, the lawyer turning pale, everything I exhaled. I didn't want it to be public." "I know," she said. "But everyone's reading it like a survival guide. You just proved it's possible to fight back and win." That night, I walked to the small cafe near my old office, the one where I used to spend my lunch breaks rewriting other people's mistakes. The barista still remembered my order. "Haven't seen you in a while," she said. "New chapter," I told her. I sat by the window sipping my coffee, watching employees and Core Access lanyards rush down the street. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a quiet distance, like watching a life I'd already outgrown. My phone buzzed again. Greer had sent the press release draft. Pulse AI secures $2.4 million seed funding to redefine workflow automation. Founded by Eva Jensen, whose resilience and innovation exemplify the next era of leadership. I read it twice, then 3 times, because no matter how many times I saw it, it didn't quite feel real yet. Leadership. The word they'd used against me for years. Now it was mine. Before heading home, I took a detour past the Caraxes building. Through the glass walls, I saw Greg's office, empty, lights off. His nameplate had already been removed. I stood there for a moment, not out of gloating but reflection. The place that once defined my worth was now just another address. I whispered, "Thank you," under my breath. Not to them, but to the version of me who stayed patient long enough to outgrow that room. When I finally turned away, the air felt lighter. The truth was, I didn't win by fighting them. I won by outlasting them. I walked home with my hands in my pockets, the city humming around me, my future wide open. And as I passed the old bus stop where I used to check emails at midnight, I thought of the line Greg once said, "You're too valuable to promote." He was right. I was too valuable, just not for them.